our biblical site, or if you don't know that we have a YouTube channel called Biblical, B-U-B-B. So that's Biblical with 3 B's and an A-L at the end. Please jump in on that too. We're going to put up some more content. We put all these talks on the YouTube there. We're looking for subscribers, so please help us. We're trying our best to kind of use this time wisely and enter maybe into a different phase, of our outreach and our ministry. But hey, first and foremost, we thank everybody who has been joining in on our Facebook Live, and also those who are slowly joining in on the Biblical channel. Big shout out to Chris McSparron for helping us out there. Big shout out to Lori, who helps us with all things technical. Yay! We're getting better all the time, and be patient with us, but we're very thankful that you are joining in with us, even though we can't join in person. It seems like our outreach is actually getting a little better. We're reaching people coast to coast and, from the mountains to the sea level and everybody in between. That's who we're hoping for, everybody in between. But we're also very committed here at Grace Community Church to the idea that people, human beings, need good ideas, and good ideas have been the basics of the Bible from the very beginning of the Bible. And when it comes to searching for the best stories, first of all, that's what we do as human beings. We look for the best stories. We look for the best ideas. And hopefully we find the best stories. Hopefully we find the best ideas, because when we do, it's amazing how much better life is. And we're absolutely convinced that those great stories that get the most out of people have always been, coming right out of the Bible. And there's really nothing that compares to it. In my estimation, the achievement of human goodness, right behind that is the Bible getting and squeezing the most out of us. So we're coming into an exciting passage. I did this for a reason, because today's talk is called God Strong. God Strong is the title of today's talk. And we are moving through Paul's letter to the church in Corinth. And we're into chapter 9, verse 19 to 27. And so what we're going to do is we're going to take our Bibles and we're going to read. We're going to hear what this sounds like. And then once we hear what it sounds like, I kind of break it down like this. This is how I do my work. I'm always looking for the literary skills that the author, and in this case, Paul, uses, because in those literary devices and combined with the history, the real people that Paul was talking to, we come together with the real message that withstands the test of time. So that's our method. And we are doing nothing but gleaning from the good work that has gone on before us. We are not here to reinvent the wheel. We are just here to recreate, a sense of all those great ideas that we know are good ideas. So I don't suspect I'm going to tell anybody anything new on any given day of the week, or something that you can't find somewhere. But what I love is the consistency that the Bible has had in the course of humanity, and the absolute, wonderful message that comes out of here, and it gets the best out of us. And that's coming from a guy who's just an old Bubba redneck cracker kind of guy, the old Irish Appalachian mountain boy, whatever. Hey, I'm just an average Bubba. That's what my kids call me. That's what people know me by. Many people know me by. And so I'm just here to help. I never mean to get under anybody's skin. I am confident that if you just spend a little bit of time with the biblical message, that you'll see everything you need to. And there is nobody more patient with us as human beings than God, as he reveals himself in the Bible. So God is not turned off by us. That doesn't mean we're doing all things well. We could be doing a lot of things poorly, but he's good dad. He's good father. Abba, Father. So to our message we go. let's hear what this passage sounds like. Also, thank you for those who do support us. We do need continual support. We still got all the bills to pay during this crazy, even though we can't meet. And so, there's a Shop Now button on the Facebook that takes you over to the Pay Now button on the website. And the website is gracemammoth.com. We're so appreciative of the help that we get, because we don't do anything without the generosity of you all. So please partner in God's gospel with us. That comes up in today's talk. We'll see it in a minute. But here's what it sounds like when Paul is putting together another part of the message in 1 Corinthians chapter 9, verse 19 to 27. And it's a bit of a famous passage too. You're going to hear some stuff that you've heard before. For though I am free from all, I have made myself a servant to all, that I might win more of them. To the Jews, I became as a Jew, in order to win Jews. To those under the law, I became as one under the law, though not being myself under the law, that I might win those under the law. To those outside the law, I became as one outside the law, not being outside the law of God, but under the law of Christ, that I might win those outside the law. To the weak, I became weak. I might win the weak. I have become all things to all people, that by all means I might save some. I do it all for the sake of the gospel, that I might share with them in its blessing. That do you not know that in a race all the runners run, but only one receives the prize? So run, that you may obtain it. Every athlete exercises self-control in all things. They do it to receive a perishable wreath, but we an imperishable. So I do not run aimlessly. I do not box as one beating the air, but I discipline my body and keep it under control, lest after preaching to others, I might disqualify myself. Okay, so that's Paul's next part of his message, and before we do anything, let's just pray. Let's ask for the help that we all need. Our Father who is in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Your kingdom come, your will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread. I got lost. Forgive us our debts as we forgive our debtors. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. We come here to see Jesus. We come here to be changed by God. Amen. So there we go. God Strong is our topic, and you kind of get a sense, God Strong, a little play off of the Live Strong motif, which is an athletic motif, and we don't need to explain all of that if you don't understand the little yellow wrist bracelets at this point. Don't worry about it. We're just going to focus on the word God Strong. And the sense of athletic competition is part of what Paul is doing here. But before this, Paul has already made a couple things clear. First of all, God has a superpower that he is giving to us, and it is the superpower of yield. So we've covered that ground. And then last week, Paul kind of unveiled how he himself puts this superpower of yield into the lives of the people in Corinth. And so to the people in Corinth, we now turn to get a little backdrop and remember that Corinth is kind of like a modern day Las Vegas. It is nuts. It's full of nutty people. It's full of what we might call bad people doing bad things. But it's what they know. It's what they do. Paul's not afraid. Paul's not afraid to hang out with people. Jesus wasn't afraid to hang out with anybody. Paul's not afraid to hang out with anybody. You shouldn't be afraid to hang out with anybody. It's part of the point of what's going on here. So there's the craziness just on itself of Corinth as the kind of all things go. There's temple prostitution. There's, gambling. There's all the craziness. And Paul has listed out what the people in church actually are or used to be. And it's not a good list. So go back to chapter 6, 5, and 6 and kind of get a list, of who Paul's working with. probably people you wouldn't hang around with. So we tip our hat to Paul, who has just a wonderful ability to mingle with people. And it doesn't matter to Paul who he's mingling with. He can, as he says, he can kind of hang out with anybody. And that's what's going on in this passage here. But also there's something else that's important about Corinth. Historically, the Isthmus Games would happen every 2 years, where you participate in athletic competitions with people from all around the known world at the time, for a little wreath. It might be made of celery, fig, whatever, I don't know. But that's what the Caesar wreath, it always looks like celery coming around back to me. But this is where the Olympics kind of start. Corinth is that place. It's, and you know what kind of crazy town, we generate around the Olympics. So not only, it's like the Olympics come into Vegas every 2 years. So that's also part of this dynamic. And so it's part of the referencing behind the scenes in Paul's language. And he's going to connect some dots for us as Christians, how we should have a mentality about us and how we ought to take God's superpower into action. And what kind of action? Well, that's what he's going to talk about. So there's that. And I think one other thing we need to have in the back of our mind about human beings that's going to be helpful as we kind of wrestle with what Paul's telling us. And what we have to come to grips with as human beings is that one of the basic human qualities that we all share, I don't care if you're white, black, red, yellow, green, purple, blue, whatever the case might be, you're a human. And if you are a human, you just do this. And what I'm talking about is the old us, them. The old us, them. So basic, so natural to the human condition. There's us and there's them. You know what I'm talking about. The old us, them factor. Now, part of the us, them factor is truly part of our basic survival, Darwinistic kind of life skills. We are, drawn to people that are similar to us out of just basic survival instincts. And so there's a part of it that's really hard to control. And I mean that. I don't fault anybody for being drawn to, the us, whoever us is, and to be drawn away from the them, whoever the them are. Oftentimes it's a great survival strategy. And, we're not going to change that. And we're not trying to say that it's all bad, but we also have to admit that the us, them thing throughout humankind has been responsible for the disasters and the horrific human behaviors, the carnage, the wars, and the incredibly vile actions that humans have committed on one another. All in the name of, you're them, not us. So the Bible is extremely aware of the old us, them factor. And some people who don't know how to read the Bible think that the Bible is actually setting us up to just be another us and not them. Not so fast. That means you're not a good Bible reader. And we'll point this out along the way. But if you have that in the back of your mind, now we're ready to come to grips with, where Paul is heading with this. And also keep in mind that as human beings, we have confirmation biases that come from the whoever the us we think is. And then our cognitive dissonances, our kind of disconnect from realities often come from the whoever we think the us are. And so we're going to work with that. It's a necessary thing to work with. Because if your information only ever comes from the us, it's probably not going to do you well or the world around you well. Okay, so how does Paul put this in his little passage here? Well, there's two sections. And the first, you can see how I drew a line through the middle here. The first section is the God strong section. It's Paul laying out the very definition, the aim, ambition, and the direction of God strong. The superpower of yields in action, and really what it's for. And so he says, for though I am free from all And we remember that Paul just got done explaining to Corinth that all his time with Corinth was free of charge. They didn't pay a nickel for his time. And that was part of him yielding to, well, their own weaknesses. Had they given to Paul in his ministry, they might have even been in worse shape because they would have totally misunderstood their role with Paul. Perhaps they would have tried to manipulate him even more, but they're already trying to manipulate him. But Paul has reminded them that I'm free from you. But Paul is free from all, he says. He is a genuinely free person. The reason is because Jesus Christ has set him free. He is genuinely free from all in the world. But at the same time, Paul then moves to explain very clearly that this freedom that he has is for making himself a servant to all. Why? That he might win them. Who? All of them. Paul has a pretty big, hairy, gregarious goal here, audacious goal, as the BHAG model might say. Yeah, Paul lives life like maybe he can win more of them, all of them. And so that's why he takes his freedom to be a servant. Okay. And then if we go down to the bottom, so he's talking about all people at the top, all people at the bottom. I have become all things to all people, that by all means I might save some. So this freedom that Paul has is a freedom to actually be in the service of others. So that's pretty top notch. Now, as we move to the next piece down, he talks about the Jews. He says, to the Jews, I act like a Jew. And Paul is a Jew, so doesn't have to act like a Jew. But he goes through all of their motions. And to clarify himself, he says to those under the law, I became as one under the law. And the laws that he is referring to is the laws that the people of Israel had lived with, the rituals that they had lived with, the food laws that they had lived with, all of the things that God had initially, after Mount Sinai, set them up with. They're still trying to do this, and they still find this incredibly important. And Paul says, I'm not going to come in and rain on your parade. I can hang with you. I can go through your rituals. I can, obey the food laws as you. I can come in, even though I don't have to, as a Jew, I don't have to do these things because I'm a Christian. I'm under the law of Christ. But I'm happy to act in the same manner that you act when I'm with you. And then he moves to the other group, the them, who Paul's happy to be around as well. He said to those outside the law, so outside the law simply means the Gentile world. To those outside the law, because I become as one outside the law. But he also puts an important qualification in. He says, I'm not, this isn't outside the law, meaning that I'm lawless and I'm untethered to God himself and the moral code and the moral conduct and the knowing of, right and wrong and good and evil and these kind of things. He said, no, not being outside the law of God, but under the law of Christ. So Paul says, I'm happy to I'm happy to be with the lawless group, those without the law of God, according to the old, part of the Bible. But I'm happy to be with the people under the old laws as well. Okay, so from a Jewish point of view, that's the classic us them, and Paul's saying there's no us them for me. And when I'm with each group, I will yield to what they're doing. I will fit in to what they're doing. I'm not going to act as a big wrecking ball in anybody's life. I'm not going to get all snooty and tooty and wag my finger at anybody. No, that's not what we're doing. And he says, even to, the people who are weak, and we already looked at, people who are weak, those who are, superstitious, or, those who are ritualistic, those who, from other religions. He says, I am not here to mess with people. I'm not here to mess with people. I'm not here to make people feel bad. I'm not playing at that level. I am here to win people over. So it's important to hear what he says 3 different times. I'm here to win. I'm here to win. I'm here to win Jews. I'm here to win those under the law. I'm here to win the weak. I'm here to win those outside the law. He's here to win. Winning is a huge part of this, which sets up, the next section. But it's important that Paul makes it very clear that he's not going to lose his sense of morality. He's not going to lose his sense of loving God and doing what pleases God as he goes into any kind of new group. But going into new groups is what Paul's talking about. He's going in to the different us's and the perceived us's of the world, whoever the us might be defined as, and people define the us in many, many, many endless ways, really. So that's the top part, and this is the God strong part. Paul's saying, the God strong in me enables me to go into any us group and to kind of hang with the us group. Not a problem. Not a problem at all. And so for Paul, it's about, the God-given strength that God freely gives to him and to all under Christ and the law of Christ is all about being able to break into different cliques, different clubs, different cultures. That is the aim and ambition of God. It always has been. And one of the criticisms that Paul has for the, Corinthian group is that they have started to break into these little cliques and groups. Some say, oh, we follow Paul, and some say we follow Cephas, meaning Peter, the apostle Peter, and some follow Apollos, who is also a dynamic, speaker in the day. We meet up with him in Acts, but they're falling into these clique mentalities, and Paul's like, whoa, this is so far away from gospel thinking. This is so far away from Christ thinking that we got to straighten this out. You got to understand the strength that God has given you is the strength to actually go into the us groups and to keep the us groups, intact. You are not called to be a wrecking ball. That is not God's mission for your life or anybody else's life for that matter. It's not the way God handles himself. So breaking into cliques, clubs, cultures, us's and them's is what it's all about, which reminds me of a great joke. I love this joke, and let me tell it very quickly. We'll imagine some guy named Bubba. He's fishing on the bank, and then there's up the bank from Bubba, a guy like me, is this kind of Eastern mystic guru type, right? And they're both fishing. And of course, the Bubba realizes that the guru type is actually catching a lot of fish. So he does, what Bubbas do, and that is we move closer to those who are actually catching the fish. We don't even care if we tangle our lines with you. We just want to catch fish. So he moves closer to this guy who is catching fish, this guru who's catching fish. But every time he catches a fish, he's staring at the fish and then he throws it back. And as the Bubba gets closer to the guru, he sees something incredible. He sees that when this guru catches a fish and stares at it, the fish's face changes into the likeness of the guru. Crazy. And so the Bubba says, whoa, hey, guru, how do you do that? The guru says, mind over matter. So the Bubba has worked himself close enough to the guru that he actually catches a fish. And when he catches a fish, the Bubba grabs a hold of the fish and he says, well, I'm going to do this too. And he grabs a hold of that fish. And as he's looking at that fish, he's staring at it with all of his concentration powers possible. And this is what happens to the Bubba. It's one of my favorite jokes. I know it's dumb and corny, but it serves the purpose of getting at what Paul's onto here. You can go into any us, them group. there's no restrictions. You're free. You're free in Christ, and you are actually supposed to go into different us groups. But the one thing that you can't let the us groups do is change you into them. You are there to try, positively only, to win them over to Jesus Christ. You're not there to make fun of them. You're not there to criticize them. You're not there to create the sense that they're worse than you or anything like that. You're just trying to win them over. And so this is the dynamic of the passage. Christians, Jesus followers, godly people who are truly strong should be able to go anywhere and be unchanged, but actually hoping to bring about change, Christ-like change, wherever they are. Information that leads to understanding the gospel of Jesus, the death and resurrection of Jesus, and what that means. Okay, let me tell you a couple things. I come from a land where, man, I'm telling you, we have all these little, things that cliques do. Western Pennsylvanians, in my estimation, because I'm from there, are the worst. But here's the thing: no matter where I've been, people say the same thing. So it's kind of an endemic. But in Western Pennsylvania, man, there is a way of doing things and a way of saying things. And if you don't do them that way, and if you don't say them that way, then people start looking at you funny. And I'm going to tell you, the moment in my life that changed me the most was the moment that we moved our family to Australia for a year. And when we were in Australia for that year, even though Australia is full of nice people, we were welcomed, there was never any problems, but it was really clear that all our little habits, all our little idiosyncrasies, all our little things that we did were, we were the fish who were out of water. We needed to let all those things go because we were on other people's turfs. It was not our place to demand that our little idiosyncrasies were met at all. We had to fit in. And I'll tell you another weird thing that happened. It was in a large gathering of Australians. And all of a sudden, I heard it. I heard an American accent. Now, I know we don't think we have an accent, but when you're in a country that says, "Good day, mate," and all that stuff, we have an accent. It's different than theirs. And I heard somebody talking American, and I found that person. I went running over to her. I was like, "Hey, you American? We're American too." And it kind of dawned on me. I'm like, isn't that funny how it's so basic to cling to those who are this person could have been a mass murderer. They could have been but because we kind of talked alike, well, all of a sudden I felt like we were bonded. Okay. So imagine that tenfold over. I mean, that's just what we do as people. And that's what is going on in this passage. I'll tell you one other competitive advantage I feel like I got, and it was a surprise to me whenever as a Christian, I really kind of thought about my upbringing. And I oftentimes say I was raised by a father who, honestly, I don't think I took very many of his, fatherly skills into my own parenting. I was on my own. He didn't do so well when it came to the role of father. We'll just leave it at that. Maybe you got a mom or dad that didn't do so well in that realm of mom and dad. I had a dad who did not do well as dad. We'll leave it there. But one of the interesting qualities of my own, kind of redneck cracker Bubba father, I suppose, is that he really had a knack for treating all people the same. He did not care if you didn't have two nickels to rub together. He did not care if you had all the nickels, period. He really did treat everybody the same exact way. And my dad was kind of a party animal guy. I just lived the life of seeing him hang with people on pretty much unconditional terms. He gave no respect, to the highfalutin, but he hung with them, and he gave no particular care for people's low economic status or whatever. He hung out with them too. He's happy. He's always happy. I give him that. He always tried to be a happy person. Drunk, but and that caused other things. He wasn't necessarily a happy person in the household, but okay, I digress enough. But I feel like that actually was a good setup for me. And I got to tell you too, I come from some friends. I've benefited from friends who I went to high school with. Not everybody, but I have a few friends, lifelong friends, that have gone on to be extremely successful. I mean, we're talking about old mill hunky kids, that didn't have much growing up, but then went to college. And I got one friend, he went on to be one of, I'm just not going to give any names or, things away, but he went on to be a president of one of the United States big companies, put it to you that. Well, so he is doing fine. And then he was bought out by Warren Buffett. Yeah, he's okay. He's doing okay. But one of the things I love about him, as we have stayed in touch, is that when we talk, I mean, there is nothing that has changed about that guy. I mean, nothing has changed. He can go anywhere and hang with people high and low. That's what's going on in this passage. That is of course you can do it without Christ, but isn't it absolutely great to know that this is the hallmark of Christianity? This is the definition of Christianity at so many levels. And speaking of levels, it's about getting onto other people's levels. It's about getting into other people's lives at their level, not your level, at their level. Listen, the world is full of people and leaders who think it's really important to be strong, unchanging, unbending. Even when they help people, they still think it's necessary to be strong, unbending, and changing. And consequently, let's be honest, they come across as pompous, pedantic, elitists, the intelligentsia, the better than yous, that kind of thing. It's nice that they're helping out, but they still bring with them the sense that, well, I need to be strong and I'm the unchanging one. And so you always have this upper lower, factor to even people trying to help, because we have this thing in us that wants to be strong and unchanging and unbending for other people. And that's what Christianity strikes against. Jesus Christ himself, God himself, in the Old and the New part of the Bible, is always into the same thing here. Let's be honest. Christianity in its history got hijacked with some bad ideas. And when I say it got hijacked, it got hijacked. That Constantine, the emperor in 300 some AD, gosh, he was not good for the Christian community. We would have been better off without Constantine, but you can't change history. It is what it is. But Constantine, becoming a Christian and then giving Christianity this enormous power, kind of developed this sense that, well, maybe we should use the powers of Rome to conquer other people, and then we'll send the preachers in, to bring them to Jesus, and so we'll use our great strength and power to actually then convert people. Now, listen, a lot of Christians throughout time and space never bought into this. Don't listen to the naysayers. In fact, most people understood it differently. But no doubt, the Christian church got sucked into this bad mentality. Even take the British Empire, they got sucked into this mentality too. Well, we'll go conquer people and then we'll send the preachers in. France did it, Spain did it. All of these countries, these Christian nations had that mentality when they started exploring. We've come to criticize them, rightfully so. But let's not forget the enormous amount of good that they actually did bring to the world. I give you a book. It's called the unpolitically correct guide series on the British Empire. That's a fantastic read. Gives you a true sense of, the British Empire did a lot of great things. I know as Americans, we love to hate them, but they really were pretty good. When you look at all the others, you know what I'm saying? I digress again. The point is that, Christianity has followed some poor ideas, but never was this the way of Jesus Christ. Never was this the way of the apostles. Never was this the way of even God. Because even Yahweh, the God of Israel, who is Jesus, by the way, but nonetheless, we've covered that in other talks. But Yahweh, in establishing Israel, was actually stooping to the world's level, the world of nations, and the practices of the nations, sacrificing and all of this other stuff is what all the nations were doing. Israel was a nation among nations, meant to be an extremely positive role model for the other nations to come in and check out their relationship with God. As we know, the story failed. Why? Because, Israel themselves couldn't get their act together. Israel themselves became the fish. You know what I'm saying? They even tell you that. That's what's wonderful about the old part of the Bible. The old part of the Bible is there saying, wow, we sure did mess up this thing. We didn't get it right. We didn't get it right. And so therefore, God took the land that he brought us into away from us. That's their story, and they're sticking to it. And that's the story that Jesus comes on to. And that's the same story that Jesus is going to continue. We are going to develop a people who are God strong people who can actually go into the whatever us factor is out there, and they can be a positive agent for change. And so as Christians, we're not meant to, in being yielders, we're not meant to be doormats. We are supposed to be strong. We are supposed to keep the course. We are supposed to stay strong ourselves. And that's why Paul's working with this winning mentality. We're supposed to have winning in mind, but not winning at the expense of others. Not winning the way the world wants to win. The way the world wants to win is by putting somebody down. We just simply want to win. And we want to compete. And we want to run races. And we want to enter the rings. Okay, so that's where Paul goes next, right? We go next to the next section. And in the next section, Paul brackets this as well with the gospel and the preaching of the gospel. And he likens Christians in the preaching of the gospel, which is simply the talking about the death and resurrection of Jesus Christ and the identity of God in Christ. But he talks about this as if we've entered a team, that we're in a team now, and this team is competing. So the words, I do it all for the sake of the gospel. And if you're following the ESV like I do, it says that I may share with them in its blessings. Unfortunately, our translators mean well, but they don't capture the right words all the time. And in this word, it's the word not share, but participant that is absolutely essential. And if you changed out that word and kind of dropped off the blessing part, because that's actually not in there, but it's not wrong. It's just that Paul's basically saying, I'm a participant. I want to participate. I wanted to join the team. I'm on a team because this is the right team to be a part of. We're on a team. Don't be an onlooker. Don't be a spectator. Be a participant. That's where Paul is at with this. The gospel changes us as a person and puts us on a team, and we should develop that kind of team mentality like an athlete on a team develops a mentality. Hey, we're sports crazy. We love it. We get it. We get how athletes train. And today's athletes, man, they are training crazy. But athletes train. We get it. And so Paul himself, living in a city that is going to be the birthplace, is the birthplace of the Olympics as we know them and still do them. He's using, these parables of runners and a parable of a boxer to make his point. And what's his point? His point is that runners run in races in order to receive a prize. So once a runner gets into a race, he's trying to win the prize. We ought to have the same mentality. Run the race, Paul says, so that you might obtain the prize. And there's only one prize, so really go for it. There's only one person who's going to cross the finish line first. And he's not saying you have to be first. He's saying you need to strive with the same intensity like you want to be first. That's what everybody running the race is doing, by the way. And the same players who ran the race the last time are running the race this time and will run the race the next time because it's It's a competition. It's an athletic competition. It's what you do if you're a runner. And then he also uses boxing as well. He says, listen, I don't run. And he's not talking about, I doubt that Paul was a runner. I really do. Maybe he was. I doubt that Paul was a boxer. Maybe he was. I don't know. It's not the point. The point is when Paul says, I don't run aimlessly. I don't box beating into the air. The point is, I run as a runner, you run the course and you get to the finish line. As a boxer, you step into the ring and you actually compete with whoever else is in the ring. And he's saying, this is the way Christians should think. Enter the ring, enter the race, like a runner does, like a boxer does. And once again, be careful. Do not take away the wrong thing. Don't think that you're here to, to be the actual winner or to knock the person out. This is not about defeating enemies. When you're running a race, it's not about an enemy. When you're entering a boxing ring, it's not about an enemy. It's a competition. It's just people. It's just people, and they'll enter another ring even if they don't win, but it's what they do. And they train to do this. Paul's saying, put the same mentality into your Christianity, into your into your love of God, into your love of Jesus Christ. Run the course, cross the line. You see, and enter the ring. If you don't do those two things, you'll be disqualified, right? Think about it. If the boxer just, continually dances outside the ring like, I'm going to get it. I'm going to get you. Never gets in the ring. Guess what? You're going to be disqualified. You're not a boxer. You're only a boxer when you get in the ring and you start boxing. You're only a runner when you follow the course. If you're a runner and you cut across town and go behind the finish line, you don't know how to run. You don't know how to run and you'll be disqualified. And Paul's saying, and that's what he's, when he finishes, he says, lest after preaching to others, I myself should be disqualified. So Paul is saying, if you don't use your God strength to relate to other people, if you don't use your God strength to relate to other people, it's like running off course and not crossing the line. It's like never getting into the ring. You're actually not participating. Participate. Be a runner. Be a boxer. And on a boxing thing, it's real easy to think, well, they're there to knock the opponent out. And in our old, Muhammad Ali and some of the old boxers, really developed this kind of hate mentality for the opponent. That wasn't most usually the case for boxers. But one of the things I like about the MMA, I know it's vicious and cruel, and I don't watch a lot of it, but I do watch some of it. But one of the things I really like about the MMA guys is that after the fight's done, they hug, they commend each other, they support each other. They're very loving. I really didn't see a lot of that in the boxing community. You saw some of it for sure, but the MMA is really good at kind of bringing the whole thing back around to, kind of a little bit of brotherly love. Once again, I'm not saying that you can only do this kind of stuff if you're a Christian, but what we are saying is that if you are a Christian, this is your mentality. Get into the race, get into the ring, train so that you might actually win people over to Jesus Christ. If you don't, keep running the race, keep entering the ring. And boy, there is no person that demonstrates, entering that ring. Paul got his block literally knocked off for just being a nice guy. The weirdness of the world is that even nice guys will get treated poorly by the world. It can happen. But Paul's point is God's strong, and the strength that God gives you is the game of life. And it is about training like an athlete in your Christianity. Train yourself. Work hard so that you can be in the race, so that you can be in the ring, and play with all kinds of competitors. Don't be afraid to compete. Don't be afraid to get into the ring with others, because you're not there to defeat them. You're there to win them. So it's a little play on winning and losing, isn't it? And that's exactly what Paul's doing. He's using some, parables to, put some traction under our feet in the way that we think about ourselves as Christian. We're not there to be bystanders. We're there to enter. And we shouldn't be the ones that can't get along with others. We should be the ones that get along with everybody. That does not mean that we're going to be like everybody. And honestly, the quintessential example is God himself. When God deals with humankind, he deals with humankind at our level. He gets down to our level. The whole biblical story is about how God insists on getting down to the human level, whether it's Israel, whether it's, let's just start from the beginning, whether it's Adam and Eve, whether it's Cain and Abel, whether it is Abraham or Noah, or later Moses, and David. It is always God who is not troubled and gets into the human world and actually stoops to our level so that he might win us over. And then Jesus himself comes into this world. It's God, man, but comes into this world as a peasant baby, leaves this world on a hideous cross in a Roman crucifixion. But God is a player, and he plays the game of life the way we ought to play the game of life. We ought to play to win. We're here to win the world over. We should not be embarrassed about that. There's nothing wrong with that. But winning the world over never means treating somebody poorly. It never works like that. There is not an example of Jesus treating people poorly. Well, he does treat the religious establishment a little bit poorly. So I guess if you wanted to, really kind of get indignant with somebody, you could, get indignant with someone who is supposed to be a leader in it. So you can get indignant with me. I'm a pastor, right? So feel free to get indignant with me, because I ought to have the yielding skills to keep it together. Don't do that with another religion. Don't do that with another culture. Don't do that with another us group out there. You can do that in the in group. You can do that. You have the freedom to do that. You have the freedom to criticize me. I know that. That's what it means to actually be a leader is you open yourself up to more criticism. I'm fine with that. And the story of God from front to back, whether it's Yahweh, Jesus, no matter where you're at in the story, creates this perfect standard with what Paul is talking about here. The truly strong that God is welling up in you is having that strength to go relate to all people that you disagree with, people that you probably, don't want to get too close to, but still you ought to relate to them. I have a piece of property where the neighbor is a heroin addict, and I have other neighbors that, have scolded me because I actually treat the heroin addict very nicely. I talk to him all the time. And the neighbor said, he's a heroin addict. And I said, I do know that. But who else is going to talk to the heroin addict? And the list just goes on. And I'm not billing myself out as, having this all down. It's hard. It's actually very hard. This is exhausting stuff. To go into other us groups, it takes a lot of energy. It takes a lot of stamina. Just like an athlete needs a lot of energy and a lot of stamina. You're going to need it. It's exhausting, but it is the game that we are in, and we need to play it well, and that we need to play it with enthusiasm, because we want to be winners, and we want everybody to be winners. We want everybody to win the same prize that we have won in Christ. So I think we've kind of come to the end of this passage. I think we've covered all that we need to cover, and hopefully we're all a little bit more God strong.